The days of going to the store to pick up your favorite band's new album, taking it home to your turntable, and listening to both sides straight through. Those days aren't necessarily over, but that certainly isn't the norm these days. Most people choose to stream one song at a time thanks to the convenience and selection offered by music streaming platforms. However, that's not to say that a cohesive album is an irrelevant concept. The mastering engineer has a unique opportunity to look at each track as a component of the whole album, rather than getting too wrapped up in a particular mix. In fact, this is one of the key roles of a mastering engineer, to ensure that each track on the album progresses smoothly into the next. This can include fine-tuning the transitions between tracks, the tonal and dynamic character throughout the album, and overall just creating an album of tracks that seem to go together, perhaps creating an album that is greater than the sum of its parts. One example of this calls back to the idea of dynamic range and perceived loudness that we discussed earlier. This time, considering the relative loudness of each song and how that will impact the listener's experience. A helpful tool here is an LUFS meter, as it provides an objective, quantitative measurement that can serve as a reference point for each track in an album. There are many different loudness meters available, and MasterPlan has one built in, as we've already seen. You don't necessarily need to set the same exact target for every track, but using a combination of metering, listening, and intuition helps a mastering engineer strike the right balance. Considering the listener will have the ability to play any individual song on demand, the mastering engineer must also make decisions that allow for each song to be a standalone piece, which can be complicated in cases where each track flows into the next, as heard throughout Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon or Daft Punk's Random Access Memories. Seemingly small details like these can have a big impact on the experience that the listener will have with the music, and it's the mastering engineer's job to think through the different scenarios and variables that could come into play when the music is distributed. That includes the technical and the artistic aspects, which brings me to my next point. An audio file may seem to contain only audio, but it potentially contains a lot more than that. For example, if you navigate to an audio file on your computer and select Get Info or Properties, you'll see that the file also contains metadata. This metadata often includes the track name and artist name at a minimum, but it can also include the album title, who wrote and performed the song, and other information that describes the audio file. The album cover can also be embedded into the audio file as metadata so that the album artwork shows, in addition to all of the previously discussed information, when connected to a car stereo, as an example. This can sometimes be done by someone other than the mastering engineer, but a mastering engineer will probably understand the process and software required to do so in cases where they are responsible for collecting and embedding the metadata themselves. In addition to these typical pieces of metadata, there's another very important piece of metadata that you may overlook: ISRC codes, or other codes for tracking plays and streams. ISRC codes are issued by the RIAA, Recording Industry Association of America. These unique codes allow for advanced analytics and tracking of radio plays, streams, and royalties. This topic requires a full video on its own, as many of the topics I've discussed today do. But it's important to recognize that a mastering engineer's job may extend beyond the realm of audio. The point of this video isn't to overwhelm you into thinking you need to hire someone to master your music. At the same time, I hope this video has helped you to see that there might be more to mastering than you initially thought. But more than anything, I want you to grasp that mastering, like mixing or anything else really, comes down to the intention behind the music and the purpose of the track. If you just want to create music you're proud of for your own use, try mastering your music with a plugin like MasterPlan or the others that are available. If you want a fresh perspective and the work of a trained pro, hire a mastering engineer to put on some finishing touches and cleanup. If your intention is to win a Grammy or be integrated into a film, commercial, or television show, it probably makes sense to work with someone that can ensure the final audio file has all of the necessary metadata.